Thank you.
Nice,
That was
guys.
amazing.
Those are some kick-ass questions. I'm like, oh, shit.
Got you thinking.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of The Ordinary Freaks. I'm your host, Eddie, and on my right,
B, what's up, guys?
and today, this guest is extremely special. Not only she's the first female on the podcast, which is a big accomplishment for us. So, but not only that, she has co-founded and she's part owner of Dance Studio in Milwaukee.
Yes. Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about that? Just give us a brief 5-second intro on why you made that.
What
Like
we made
created dance. Yeah.
Dance Studio exists basically to use dance as a tool to help people find themselves and boost their self-esteem.
You're also co-director of Alma, Milwaukee, right?
Yes.
Which is a professional dance company, essentially.
More or less, yeah.
I mean, it is.
Professional. We'd like to think we are, but, semi-professional.
And it's basically on the same lines of trying to help motivate people with dance and, help that community, right?
Exactly. Through performing and putting themselves out there and working on a routine for 6 months.
Aside from that, you're a true hustler.
Yes.
A crazy entrepreneur. Like, we just first met a couple weeks ago, but just listening to you, it really got me inspired to just continue to create my craft and focus on what I really wanted to do. And I kid you not, that day I went home and I was traveling,
yeah.
but I went home and did laundry and I sat down and wrote for 2 hours on what do I need to do, what I got to better myself, just because
That's amazing.
The way you just spoke, it just really resonated with me. So I'm really honored that you're here. So
thank you.
For that.
Thank you guys for having me.
Of course, Amber. So let's get right to it. So Dance Studio Milwaukee. Why dance? Where did that come from? Where did that stem from? Were you always a dancer? And why pursue that?
Sure. So I started dancing when I was 6, and I was classically trained. So I did ballet, tap, jazz, the stereotypical stuff that you would do as a kid if you wanted to learn dance. And
Right.
I was always interested in salsa, but at the time I only knew about ballroom, and that's kind of what was more glamorized back in the day. Mm-hmm. And when I was in architecture school at UWM, we had to take an art credit, and I was like, man, I don't want to sit and just take notes and learn about art. I'd rather just dance. So there was this world traditional movement class that was all about salsa and merengue. And I'm like, hey, this sounds kind of cool. I've always wanted to do it. And my scholarship that I had at UWM was going to pay for the class. So I'm like, why not? And the rest is history. I fell in love with it from day one. I felt like my heart beat different. The way that I moved was different. Yeah. I was just so happy being in the class. So pursuing dance was never the plan, but it was something that I was always doing on the side in school.
Okay. And when did you decide, you said that was never the plan, or I guess it wasn't in the plans. Where did that, when did that come about? When did you decide to, open your own dance studio, start or kind of partner your own dance company?
So I started my own dance company with my co-director, Joshua Burgos, and we started right after I graduated from UWM. So that was roughly 3 years ago, May of 2015. And we ran together our Latin dance organization at UWM. And once I graduated, no one wanted to take it over. And I was feeling bad about it. I'm like, how can I still inspire people to dance or let people know about salsa and bachata and kind of take it to the next level? So I wanted to bring a training platform to Milwaukee. So having Alma Milwaukee is a franchise branch of Alma Latina. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of a way to use someone else's technique platform and their choreography, but still kind of put my own twist on things and be able to still teach and kind of share that. But dance definitely was never the plan. And what really hit me hard was when I graduated that summer, I found out that I needed to get bunion surgery. My feet were really bad. Anywhere from tennis shoes to just chanclas. I couldn't wear anything. I pretty much needed to be barefoot because my feet were hurting so bad, and I couldn't work. Like there was really not much that I could do, and so not really being on my feet for 9 months, just starting our dance company like 3 months before my surgery process had started. That healing process being 9 months, not being able to really teach. I would, just sit like I am now and help the girls like with their arms or something, but I couldn't really move and show anyone that. And not being able to dance for so long, it was kind of like, okay, once I could dance, how can we reinvest into our company and do more for our students? And we really wanted them to be able to have a home. So kind of going from there, it's like, oh, let's just find a little warehouse space just to rent and dance. And then our studio just honestly blossomed into something totally different. It's like we planted this seed thinking it's only going to be, one flower or this small tree, and the tree has just grown and produced so much fruit and turned into more than what we ever thought it would be.
I want to go back a little bit. Sure. You talked about, starting a ballroom dancing. Can you speak about your influence? Like who made you, or was that a natural thing that from a kid standpoint, that you always wanted to be a dancer in that sense, or was someone just kind of pushing you to do something creatively?
That's a good question. I always wanted to do dance. I guess when it first started, I was very competitive as a child. So my best friend in grade school did dance, and I'm like, I want to be like my best friend. So I'm going to do this. And so I followed in her footsteps back then, at the age of 6, and then she quit and I kept going. And I always loved it. It was a way to relieve stress. It was a way for me to not, think about homework or think about school or other things. And I was just happy doing it. I liked my instructors. I liked the other girls that I had class with. It was just a really good way for us to bond. And when I started as a kid, it wasn't everybody from the same school. So it was really cool for me to get to meet people outside of my school, because I went to a Catholic grade school, very small classrooms, for 10 years, from kindergarten to 8th grade. You're together. So it's kind of nice to have friends outside of school that I felt like I could relate with more. So that's kind of how dance started. And I found out more about salsa through like So You Think You Can Dance and all those dance TV shows when they first came out. Early 2000s, I want to say. Yeah. So I was interested in it, but I only knew about ballroom at the time. Like nobody had really advertised that there was urban salsa, urban bachata, that was a thing. And then trying it out at UWM, what really ignited a fire within me was a couple things. So number one, the class that I took at UWM, the instructor really favored one particular race, and that really hit me hard, because it was a very diverse class, but only one particular background or race was allowed to demonstrate. Like if somebody was doing good, it would only be the same people that could demonstrate how hard they were working. And I'm like, I'm white, but I could dance too.
Right,
I'm good. I'm practicing.
Right.
So that really hit me hard, because I felt like she played a lot of favorites. And for it being a class within the arts category, I was like, this isn't really sitting right with me. But what I did like that this instructor did was she forced us to go out into the community and go out just like you did to Gibraltar. At the time, I think I went out to Warehouse or Studio Lounge back when they were open. And we had to just go and then write a paper on our experience. And I was super nervous, but I went with a couple people from class, and I just fell in love with it. I'm like, whoa, there's so many people from, different work backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, different ages. And I'm like, this isn't Milwaukee. I literally did not feel like when I went out into what we call now the Latin dance scene, I did not feel like I was in Milwaukee, because we're so segregated, and that always bothered me. And I always hung out with people outside of just people that fit within, my, race background. So to see that be kind of the norm for that type of community, that really drew me in. And everyone was really friendly and just having a good time, very welcoming. And I'm like, I want to be in an environment like this for the rest of my life. And I didn't feel like, at school or with other things I was doing, that was the case. So that energy was super contagious.
Yeah. And so I guess to that point, dance was kind of just, you really enjoyed it. It was for fun. You grew up doing it.
Yeah.
I don't think you really ever imagined like I'm gonna do this full on. And
No.
so I know you from, we go a little bit back from an internship we had together at a local industrial automation company in Milwaukee. And I told you when we were connected after several years, I was like, I really admire you since back then. You were kind of like the go-getter. You try to set up programs, try to do this, but you were always restricted in a sense by whatever corporate people, whatever the instance might have been. And you kind of kept pursuing that. You had other internships. What, did that have any, I guess, change within you to say, I want to do something else. I don't want to continue in this path. I don't want to do architecture, because I know at a point you kind of switched off from architecture as well.
Right.
So can you talk about the plan? What was the plan and how that actually changed through those experiences?
Yeah. So my plan was since high school to become an architect. I applied for a scholarship at UWM. My full ride scholarship was based on this binder that I had since freshman year of high school. And it was this I was always the type of person that you better have plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, maybe even E, you know? So this binder organized my whole life for college. Like I already figured out what classes for architecture I needed to take and everything. And it provided security for me. But then once I was in the classes for architecture, I wasn't enjoying it. Even though in high school I had an architecture internship, I did well in my classes. I kind of put out there in the universe that, hey, this is what I want to do. And my parents and everyone were supporting me. But I was taking the classes. I was like, man, I'm not feeling this. Like I didn't feel like my heart or my soul was full. Like I felt like something was missing. And then I was just going through the motions because it's something that I had already predetermined in this binder. And I felt like I put all of this work in high school towards this. Everybody knows that this is me. How could I ever try something else?
Do something else.
So being a part of the student org Ahora, I didn't start it. Another group of students started it, and I just really enjoyed being around them. So that really helped me. I felt like being around different students of, different degrees that they were pursuing was super helpful. And so when I became a part of it and became an officer, I was the outreach specialist. It was my job to just go out and meet people and tell people about what we were about. And that's when everything really changed, because I fell in love more with the student org that I was a part of. And it was a hobby, but I was really into it. At my drafting table, listening to salsa, listening to bachata, drafting and dancing.
Definitely been there.
I was just sitting there and I'm like, I don't want to sit. I don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
So I did that for a year and a half, and I did just one semester of architecture studio, which you know what that's like. Yeah. And I knew it wasn't for me. And so I went into marketing. I still wanted to be able to be creative and still express myself. Obviously, it wasn't pursuing a dance degree, but at that time I was like, I'm not going to. My parents would have killed me if I would have used my scholarship money to go to college for dance. So I'm like, okay, marketing, it's broad. Social media, was still popular 5 years ago. So I figured that would at least provide job security. But with the corporate internships and things like that, I always felt restricted. And that's kind of how I felt in architecture too. I felt like you couldn't just do what you wanted or be yourself or have these ideas. It kind of had to be, here's the creative space, and we were told that we could be creative, but then it'd be like, there's black and white. It's, right or wrong. And it was the same thing in the corporate world, where I could never just go in, do my job and leave, because I'm so passionate about anything and everything that I do. And when I was in those internships, I always saw more value in my job than what was written in the description or, based on what my boss at the time told me to do. I'm like, hey, I see this gap. What do you think about this? Or I see that we could be working on this. Can I get my hands involved in this too? And I was just a little too ambitious. And that was a constant thing at all of my internships, where I could feel the tension kind of grow around me, and more micromanaging happening. I felt like people were kind of breathing down my neck once I started speaking up more about what I saw, and it just wasn't what they wanted. They wanted intern to come in, work, not speak their mind, not share their opinions, and just kind of be, I felt conditioned. So that way, by the time you're offered a full-time job, you know what's right and wrong for the corporate world. And I was like, then this isn't for me.
Yeah.
And I remember the day, the last internship that I had, I quit that March because I had like a part-time marketing job that I was offered. And it felt so good. Like I didn't even give a full 2 weeks notice, which number one, for the record, is so unlike me. I just didn't care. I was like, I'm really not feeling this. And I remember quitting and within a couple of days just walking out. And that day that I walked out and I had all my stuff packed and I knew like I was just done. You know, I signed my like resignation paperwork and all that stuff that they make you do when you quit. That was one of the most liberating moments.
Freedom.
Yeah. Like freedom dance out and everything. Like I really felt free.
Walked out of there.
Right? I really felt free and I was kind of like, okay, like I have this, you know, marketing job that I'm going to do. And I thought that I was totally set. And then that didn't work out at all, actually. So I had that job right up until I graduated. Actually, the day before I graduated, they told me that they were doing budget cuts. And I lost my job the day before I walked. And that was super, super devastating. But what's funny is when I graduated, I was a IMUWM campaign student that was featured as like a featured graduate. So they had me do something similar to this, like interview, and then they filmed me dancing. So at graduation, I was a featured student, and they showed me dancing salsa and stuff. So my graduating class was like, oh, of course she's dancing salsa. Like that was always kind of a part of just who I was whenever I wasn't working. That's what I was doing. So I'm losing my train of thought for where we're going with this, I feel. But dance was never a part of the plan. I think for me, it was this buildup of corporate jobs never working out and then having that marketing job and then thinking that I was going to be secure because that's why I switched to a business degree. Yeah. Thinking I would have that security, and that's kind of what was promised to me, not in writing, but verbally promised.
Right, that's what they saw to you.
And then to lose my job right before I walked and graduated, I was like, this isn't anything that I planned for. Like, now what do I do? There's no binder for this, Amber.
Right.
Like you've exhausted all of your options. And so I ended up working for Uber part-time that summer in the Uber office back when they were at Grand Ave Mall.
Oh, cool.
And then that summer while I was working for them is when I found out about my bunion surgery, and then I couldn't really do much. So I think it was for me just more getting fed up of being told the same thing, like keep your mouth shut, don't contribute these ideas. And then just seeing everyone around me dance for 9 months and not be able to do anything about it, I kind of just broke. I'm like, why not just do something dance related? Because that's who I am and what I love to do. And there's always corporate jobs available. So if it doesn't work out,
always go back.
There's always something to fall back on. So that's kind of how everything built up. And I think that's what gave me the courage to take the leap. Also with my business partner too, like we've been dating for like 6 years now and dancing together for so long, having each other helped too, because it wasn't just me and all of my life savings. It was both of our life savings put into this. So at least we knew, well, if one of us screws up, at least we're both screwing up together. It's not just one person.
It feels good when you have support, you know?
Yeah, so that's huge. It's just having another person like to go through it with, which I think most entrepreneurs are doing it on their own and in time kind of accumulate this support system.
Right.
So
you spoke about your struggles through architecture, through your corporate jobs. Can you speak a little bit after you took your leap? Down the road, trying to create this, you know, community for yourself, for your partner. Can you talk about some of those struggles you faced as a woman in the field that you're in?
One of the biggest things that stands out to me that I want to touch on is something that's still going on, which is kind of a shock for a couple of reasons. So whenever my business partner and I will have like a meeting with someone, or when someone comes into the studio, or we'll have a meeting at the studio, outside of the studio, a lot of people will assume that Josh is the owner and that I'm an employee or an assistant or just like the teacher. But for most suburb studios and studios in general, they're usually owned by a woman or a group of women. So it's kind of interesting how those dynamics have happened, or just how people assume things. So when, you know, we're having these conversations together in meetings with people, like they'll mainly just give Josh eye contact, and then I just kind of sit there and I try to chime in on the conversations, and Josh is good at kind of like moving the eye contact towards me to eventually help them realize like, hey, there's 3 people, or, you know, there's 2 of us that you're working with, and we're equal partners, you know, legally too. Like we both own 50% of our business. So that's the biggest thing for me that is a struggle and bothers me a bit with it being 2018, that's still being a thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of surprising. And then, you know, in the dance world, it usually being women that own the businesses for studios. But I think it's a little bit different also too, because our studio is focused on urban Latin dance, salsa and bachata. And when you go to a class or when you travel anywhere in the world, usually it's the lead that takes control of the majority of the class. They're the ones teaching footwork. They're the ones teaching partner work. And then follows are normally women, sometimes men, but they're kind of there as more of a demonstrator. Well, maybe they'll give, you know, some feedback for, you know, women in the class, but it's usually led by men. And so I'm wondering if people are, you know, in that mindset, not to make an excuse, but when I was talking to someone else earlier today, they kind of brought that perspective. And I'm like, you know, I never thought about it that way, but we aren't a typical dance studio. We aren't what you see in the suburbs. Our classes aren't focused on kids. They're focused on adults and, you know, partner work. So I could kind of see where people are coming from. But that part does get to me sometimes, especially in the beginning. We had a lot of that. It's a little bit better now because people know who we are. Like we're kind of branded as co-owners. So most people know Josh and Amber, or Amber and Josh. But in the beginning, when we were starting, people either just knew Josh or just knew me as like separate entities. So it's kind of taken time. So that was one of the difficult things. Another difficult thing for being a woman with our struggle was just our living situation. Number one, I think there is definitely pressure when you're a woman and a dance instructor to look a certain way or fit a certain part, especially when you're a white girl teaching urban Latin dance. People are kind of like, what's going on? You know, they kind of assume that you should, you know, look a certain way and whatnot, or wear certain clothing. And I'm super laid back. Like I just wear leggings and a t-shirt when I teach, no makeup, like very laid back. So, you know, when people are looking at these classes on YouTube that are super glamorized, there's women in bodysuits and all, you know, it's totally different than what we have. You know, we're super relaxed. So when we decided to save money for a year and move into our own dance studio, because we couldn't keep our doors open if we wouldn't have given up our apartment, that was hard for me. I got my car broken into. I had all my performance makeup stolen during that time. So like just like losing all that stuff and getting rid of stuff, like not having my performance makeup, that stuff was expensive. Not being able to shower all the time. Like we didn't even have enough money to have a gym membership to shower every day. So learning how to shower, you know, in the sink, or like drive to Josh's mom's house like every other day, like planning showers as a woman, like you really feel crappy about yourself. And it's like no one else knows, but you know it for yourself. And I was just really hard on myself. Like, wow, I just want to feel like a normal human being, you know, clean, being able to take care of myself. And I literally had to give up everything that I used to do to take care of myself just to, you know, stay afloat. So I think that mental and emotional battle was really hard too.
So those are, I think, a lot of battles, but you learned a lot from those battles.
Oh, yeah.
I know you mentioned before that from not really being able to cook or eat, now you're, I guess you said if it's carne asada, you'll eat carne asada, but you're vegan now.
Yeah, or plant-based focus.
There we go.
It's kind of vegan is so political.
Yeah, you're right.
But close to that for sure.
But I mean that, you know, you're, I guess, way more resourceful.
Yes.
Can you touch a little bit on those things? And I mean, those are a few. Is there anything else you learned from all those experiences besides that?
That was one of the biggest ones, and I can kind of go into a little bit of detail. I always think of it as like a tiny house. I think it's a show now too.
Yeah, it is.
But just learning how to be smart with space, like kind of just cleansing myself from like everything that I owned, like getting rid of a lot of crap that I owned, learning how to be resourceful with space, like hiding things underneath the couch. With food, like we had a microwave that we didn't really use. So with food, we had to be resourceful with our budget. It was tortillas, avocados, rice, beans, and that was pretty much it. And I still eat that stuff. So that's what's funny is I thought I would get sick of it. But yeah, not eating meat for so long, like you don't really miss it.
Yeah.
Timing, just learning how to like live this double life of like, yes, we're working on our business and then treating it like a home for a very small amount of time, and then having to switch my mindset and go, okay, like I'm not at home now, I'm working, because it was hard to have people rent the studio late at night, for example. We want to make money, we want people to use it, but then it's like, well, I don't want to be at a coffee shop or whatever till 10 o'clock every day just because people need to use it. So that struggle was really, really difficult too. And keeping up with the times, because we had people renting the studio as early as 5:30, 6 in the morning. So making sure that we got up and left the studio. It was like literally living this double life that only 2 people knew about for a year, and just having to get comfortable with it and just write it off and not even think about it. That was the hardest thing for me. But it did get to that point where I didn't care. I just got over it. And I definitely feel like I can handle a lot more things in terms of curveballs that the business throws our way, because it's like, oh, we've been through that.
More
like it's
things,
almost like, yeah, it's like, oh, we have these other tools now that we can use, these other experiences that we can kind of revert back to and go, okay, no, this isn't a big deal. Like you can kind of brush off certain things and not focus on little things that used to seem like big things, but now it's like, nah. It's not as important.
Where does the connection with Alma come? Because I know you guys have your dance studio.
Yes.
Alma's not from Wisconsin, not from the States. So where does that come about?
So Alma, I'll go with Alma Latina first and then kind of go into Alma Milwaukee. So when Josh and I first met, we decided that we wanted to do this bachata competition. It was super low key, but that happened like really, really low key. Like it was the first time that Milwaukee had ever done a competition for bachata, because it wasn't that popular. And we're like, well, we don't really know a lot of bachata moves. Let's YouTube it, right? Like that's what everybody did back at the time. So when we were looking into these dance moves, Alma Latina kept popping up, and they like their world champion, like first place videos kept popping up. Social dancing videos of them, just some of their classes in Mexico, like they were just all over YouTube. And Josh and I kind of did more research on them on Facebook, and we're like, wow, they seem really humble for the amount of awards that they've won. They're one of the most awarded dance companies in the world for like first, second, and third place for salsa and bachata, and they've been around for about 13 years. So, back then it was like 6 or 7 years that they had been around, but we really just admired them and just started stalking them on Facebook and on YouTube. And we were like, wow,
trying
we
to soak
won.
up much, right?
Yeah. And we were like, we would really love to meet them, because their energy just seemed to be very genuine. And we're like, how can you be so amazing, but be, not have an ego? Like it came off like they were just really down to earth. And so, they had launched on Facebook like way later on that they were starting franchises. And we were like, oh, like what is a franchise? What does this mean? And they were kind of explaining, you are purchasing choreography from them, but you're purchasing their technique platform. So you get access to all of these videos of the technique that they use back in Mexico. And that's exactly what we were looking for, because when we started dancing and we became hungry for more, and we felt like the city didn't have to offer what we wanted. We wanted there to be this well-organized roadmap, I guess you could say, for dancers to know, like, I can start with nothing and I can, become advanced. But at the time it was like, well, what does advanced mean? What does intermediate mean? There was nothing really built out. And our sister city, Chicago, their city's so big. They have so many more people. They've kind of had a lot of great instructors and technique and things invested into their community. In Milwaukee at the time just didn't have that. And we were like, well, either we have to move or, bring something here. So Alma bringing them or their company to Milwaukee was just the best thing that we could have ever done. So we are celebrating our 3rd year anniversary in May, actually. Okay. So time has really flown by. And Josh and I actually flew out to Paris right before we opened the studio to meet them in person, the owner of the company. and we did training with them. And then we actually flew them into Milwaukee that summer to kind of kick off the grand opening of the studio and Alma Milwaukee celebrating its first year. And we developed a really strong relationship and kind of gave them some ideas for what we think that they could use some help with. Right. So we actually work for them part-time. So we do all of their media coverage on Instagram, some of their Facebook stuff, some of their events that they do, and then we do media coverage for them for when they travel to really big events. So even though we have a franchise of theirs, we actually run all of their franchises. So we have developed relationships with directors in China, in Canada, other directors in Mexico, other directors throughout the United States. So not only do we have our own franchise here, but because we've been around for a bit, we can help other directors, start up their franchise, and we kind of serve as like a liaison between the pro team, the professionals in Mexico, and the other cities that use the same platform. So it's everything really works well hand in hand.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to touch on something that you guys recently unveiled to everybody, and that's winning the money prize for a project pitch, which is essentially like the Shark Tank in Milwaukee, correct?
Yes, definitely.
Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes.
And its importance?
I would love to. I'm glad that you brought that up, actually, because the experience being on Project Pitch It was absolutely amazing, and we were really disappointed with the small cut of footage that was shown because it didn't demonstrate what our studio was about at all. And it's funny how I was talking about earlier about how people would only talk to Josh when we have meetings, because when you watch the episode on YouTube, it actually only shows me talking. Which we were not expecting, and they didn't give us a preview of this. We watched it live just like everybody else did. But the experience was really amazing. We actually got asked to audition back in November of last year, and we didn't know what it was because Project Pitch It, we're like, what is this thing? Is it a scam? We looked them up on Facebook. They only had like 90 likes. We're like, what is this? Is this legit? So we were actually hesitant because we hadn't heard of it. And it was for their second season. So they were a little bit new. It's run through Cardinal Stritch. So there's college students working on this with other professors that teach entrepreneurship or are involved in programs like that at Cardinal Stritch. So it's this big collaboration of that college with entrepreneurs in Milwaukee or in the greater Milwaukee area that have been really successful, and they're called moguls, or like they're like basically the sharks. And they also like are partially financially invested in helping out with the show. So we did that back in November, and we were told, we're not guaranteed to be on the show. We just come pitch our studio and see what happens. And we were surprised to get a call back. And within, a week and a half, we had to refine our pitch, do a couple dress rehearsals, and then film the show. So we spent our entire month just focusing on this show. And what was really neat and a good experience for us was actually focusing just on our studio, because we wear so many different hats. Because we have Alma Milwaukee, because we help Alma Latina out part-time, plus we have our studio. We've never had an opportunity to just focus on just the physical business that we own, just the studio. And so it was actually a challenge, and helped bring us back to our why, and helped us think about, okay, well, what do we want the studio to be? Yes, there's classes. Yes, there's rehearsals there, but what's the bigger picture? And it really forced us to just focus on the studio. And that's what the business really needed at that time. So going through that, we're told that there's 3 different prizes. So everybody's a winner basically on the show. You could win or earn, I guess you could say, mentorship and roughly $10,000 worth of like classes and office space at Cardinal Stritch. And then the second prize is $10,000 cash, where they just write you a check for whatever your business needs. And then the third opportunity or prize is investment, where they set you up with meetings with local investors that could really help expand a business depending on what they felt that you needed. So we went in there asking for the $10,000, But when we went out of the filming, we felt horrible. We felt like our pitch was just so bad. It was 20 minutes that we were going back and forth with the sharks on the show. And we were prepared for a lot of their questions, but there were certain questions that we were like, we are not prepared for this. Like, just totally over our heads. We're like, we haven't even thought about this yet. And, you know, we had moments where we're both looking at each other like, you want to answer, you know, and we had those awkward moments. And from talking to other people on the show, they went through the same thing. But our pitch was about the community and about wanting to give the community that our business serves more. And one of the many things that we brought up was just having shoes available to sell. And we were really disappointed when the show aired because they only focused on the shoes. So we had people, you know, like messaging us and calling us afterwards or, you know, talking to us like, oh, so it sounds like you guys were just really all about the shoes. You guys just wanted to sell shoes at your studio. And we're like, that's really, such a small portion of the focus of the pitch. It was just something that, you know, we wanted to offer, but not, you know, why we spent a month's worth of time
on shoes.
Putting our pitch together. And you don't really need $10,000 worth of inventory on shoes. You know, there are things that we mentioned to them like full transparency, we need to completely rip up our floors and rebuild them from scratch because of the weather that we have in Milwaukee, with like the concrete floor that's underneath, with it being really cold. We have to kind of put another barrier to prevent the heavy expansion and contraction. So we talked about that. We talked about how all of our dancers gave up 2 weeks of rehearsals to help us build the floors. You know, they were working full-time jobs plus staying up with us till 2 to 4 in the morning, building the floors, painting the studio, cleaning the studio. It was such a community approach. And so we were explaining that because of that, that's why we wanted what we invested into the studio to help the studio make more money, but give back to the people that have believed in the studio from day one. You know, we wanted a better sound system. We wanted to redo the floors. We wanted keyless entry. That way people didn't have to wait for us with a key to open up the door for them. You know, we kind of went through all of these things. So for them to focus on shoes, we weren't really happy with that. I guess that's why we haven't shared the link on our Facebook page. We're like, if you saw it live, cool. Otherwise, that's it. But we had a viewing party where we had a lot of people that have supported us from the very beginning come and see the episode live. And we were able to explain ourselves a little bit more and say, hey, you guys are probably wondering, you know, what else happened behind the scenes. So we let everyone know what we are actually planning on doing with the money. And then as we've spent some of the money already, we got a third speaker and a nice big subwoofer for our socials and stuff. As we spend the money, like we put it out there. We're super transparent. We want the community to feel like not only are we thinking about them, but they're directly involved. And when they are telling us that there's something that they want, that we're super responsive. And our hip hop classes have been super busy. And, you know, when there's 50 people in a class, you need good sound. And when not everyone can feel it, when only like a third of the studio can feel it, you know, now we have surround sound and they're super appreciative of that. So the show, the experience was really amazing. There's a guy named Jim Lindenberg who's considered like a serial entrepreneur because he's owned so many different businesses and sold them. He owned the Milwaukee Way for a while. So he actually on the show offered to be our mentor. So he actually met up with us after the show and we showed him, you know, hey, this is what we plan on doing with the money. What are your thoughts? And he gave us his honest feedback. So we really made sure that we thought about everything before we, you know, invested.
That's awesome.
So what's in the future for Dance Studio Milwaukee, for Amber, for Alma? Like what's coming up? What are you guys up to? Any plans? Is it an expansion, offering any more courses? What can the people expect when they come to your classes? Can you touch a little bit on that?
Sure. So when people come to our classes, what they can expect is to be in a completely judgment-free zone. And I feel like nowadays it's really hard for people to believe that because social media puts all of us on blast, like we put ourselves on blast so easily. But it really is judgment-free. So when people come into our studio, the first thing that they're going to feel is positive vibes, good energy, a big open space, and they're going to have a great time and they're going to be with other people that want the same thing. So right away, like, they're going to make friends when they take our classes, whether it's people that rent from us, classes that Josh and I teach, or classes that Chris teaches. He does the kids and adult hip hop. So that's something that we really want people to know. It's judgment free, and it's to have a good time and leave everything else at the door. It's just to focus on you or whoever you're there to vibe with. But it really is just all positive vibes. In terms of things that are coming up, it's more of what our big vision is. We would like to expand. We can't expand right now, but with the building that we're in, it's a lot of other small businesses. So if there was one of the businesses next to us that moved out, maybe because they grew and outgrew their space and they go somewhere else, like, we've made it clear to our landlord, let us know if they plan on leaving, because we would love to be able to expand and have a second studio. We don't feel like we're quite there yet, but we could see maybe within the next year being ready to have a second studio. That way 2 classes can go on at the same time. And then when we have our socials, we can have a bachata room and a salsa room. Like, that for us is...
No one's fighting for the floor.
Exactly. So. Super important. So those are some, like, really big things that we want. Josh and I have talked a little bit about, like, franchising too. Obviously, that would be way down the road, but we really feel like our business model is very sound. We really feel like we are jet setters or pioneers that are trying to make dance more easily accessible, and YouTube has done a really great job of doing that, but we're doing it in real time, in person. We're helping people get off their phones, get off their laptops, and come meet people, come talk with people, come move, come lose weight, come, like, release some endorphins. So we would love to be able to have more communities in the future, have our model, and share that outside of Milwaukee.
These are, we like to call, our ordinary freak questions we ask every episode.
Okay.
You touch a lot on, you used to have a plan, and that plan kind of went to shit, and you just figured stuff out as you went, kind of thing, and now you're successful in what you do, and you are happy with what you do, and you're pursuing your passion and dreams. But, let's say someone in senior in high school, senior in college is coming up to you. What advice would you give to someone, that stage or that age, that doesn't know what to do, doesn't know what their next move should be, whether it's school, whether it's get a job? What advice would you give that person?
Sure. Well, for anyone graduating high school, I'm going to take the Gary Vee approach, because I really believe in everything that he says. And I really think that anyone graduating high school should really think about college. Is it worth a financial investment? I really second guess college, and I had a great experience, but I really think that nowadays, with the amount of information that's out there on the internet and a lot of small businesses really supporting our economy, I really think that those students that have an idea of what they want to do, or they're really passionate about something, or they're thinking up things with some friends, like, they should really think about, like, how much money is this degree going to cost? And am I actually going to work in that industry when I graduate? So I would encourage those graduating from high school to just do some soul searching early on, which is hard to do. I feel like when we're in our, 17, 18, like, it's a hard age, but to do that, or go abroad, go travel, do something that involves soul searching early, because if they can attack that early on, then they'll be able to make better decisions about, should I go to college, or should I not, or what should I do? And for those that are graduating college, I would say the same thing with traveling. I think that's super important, just to not go back to back to back, like, work your ass off in college and then just work so hard just to find a job, just to work a 9-to-5 or whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Some people want that security, but I feel like people that I met through corporate specifically, later on, their biggest regret was not traveling, not taking time for themselves, not taking time just to take a breath, where they were so focused on security. It's like nothing else in their life mattered. And seeing that regret and in those people's eyes and faces, I'm like, that's not going to be me, That really drove me too. So I would say on both ends, travel, soul searching, like, really thinking about who do they spend their time with, think of, like, the top 5 people that they hang out with, and make sure that those are sound people that you, that you really trust and should be hanging out with. I think that's the most important, because then once your circle's set and you're set here, everything else flows from there.
Yeah, I feel like you could definitely tackle the world after that. Right? I wanted to ask you, do you think that you chose your passion or did it choose you?
Oh, I like that question. I feel like it chose me specifically because the way I feel when I dance, nothing in my life has ever made me feel that way. I feel like it's just like whatever energy's out there that it found me and taught me certain lessons that got me to where I am now. Just going with my gut the whole time. I really do believe that.
I think that's definitely key because it's hard, to answer in that sense, right? Because I think we as a society we're basically taught that, and we're nurtured in that sense that we're like we need to find what we want to do,
right?
Not the reverse, right? So yeah, that's a beautiful answer.
If you could have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would it be and where would you take them?
Who would it be? That's a very good question. No one has ever asked that before. Ever. Who would it be and why?
Anyone. Anything.
Honestly, I feel like it's a little cliche, but I would love to have dinner with Oprah. I really would.
Okay.
I feel like she's done a lot of different things. Like she's not just known for one thing.
Right.
I would love to just know a little bit more about her turning point. Because I don't know a lot about her upbringing, but like you guys kind of asked me about my turning point. Like when did I kind of decide to make that switch? Yeah. I would kind of want to know what was her path like, or that pattern, that life pattern, and what happened that broke that pattern.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where would you take her?
Oh, somewhere in Europe, because the quality, the quality of life over there, I believe, is so much more. It's a higher quality of life, like somewhere in Spain or Portugal, where it's sunny and warm, and there's just fresh food.
Okay,
cultures are completely different.
Yeah, and totally different vibe. So yeah, I would take her somewhere over there.
Yeah, now you got me thinking about Oprah because she's done so many things at such an early age. I wonder what really broke too. I'm going to start doing my research on that.
Yeah, same.
What would you tell the people that think that they can't dance, or they say, I'm too shy for that, or I have 2 left feet? What do you tell them?
I tell them, then you're the perfect customer for our studio and you need to come and you need to be there because that is our target market. And we hear that all of the time. People are like, or even they'll comment on our videos like, oh, cool hip hop video, but I could never do that.
Yeah.
Like, perfect. You just called yourself out. You should be here. So just letting them know that you belong in our studio and that there's a place for them to not feel embarrassed or shy because everybody else that's there is saying the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. If you could pinpoint one reason that people fail, what would that reason be?
I would say self-doubt. I really believe that people fail from within. I love that question. I feel like you're reading my mind because that's really something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. And it resonates with our studio, but it even goes deeper than that because social media really provides this platform where it's really easy to put on a front and put out there what we want, what we think people want to hear from us. And it's so easy to care so much about what everybody else has to say. Yeah. And I've come to that recently too, where I'm like, why am I caring about what these people are thinking? Like, they're not me. They don't know me. It's my life, not theirs. Yeah. So I really believe just having low self-esteem or like low confidence or low belief in yourself is why people fail, because at the end of the day, nobody can want something for you more than you want it for yourself. Yeah. And as long as you have that fire from within, no one else can take that away from you, you know?
I mean, I agree 100% because I think anything wants to do, even, I'll take it for us, for this podcast. I mean, we had to, at one point, get over that hurdle where you're like, you're going to be on whatever platform, you're going to be on YouTube, people are going to see you. You get to that point where you're like, I just don't care. This is what I want to do. This is my passion. This is what I care for. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Who cares, you know? Who cares
Exactly.
what others have to think?
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do, though.
Yeah, I agree.
It is, yeah. Well, to cap it off, I want to ask you one final question. This is a question that we ask everybody that comes through the podcast. On a scale from 1 to 10, how weird are you? How much of a freak are you? And why?
That's a good question. So I'm not going to lie. When I first saw the branding for this from a marketing standpoint, I thought sexual right away. I'm like, freaks? Oh, what? I'm like, what have you gotten yourself into? That's the first thing I thought from a branding standpoint. How much of a freak am I? Well, I guess a freak would be like determined by our own standards.
Exactly.
So for my own standards of freak, I would say an 8 or 9, only because I've gotten to the point in my life where I don't give a fuck about what people think.
There you
And
go.
I'm going to do me. And I got there only because I learned how to live without anything. Like, I gave up all the material things I used to care about that defined who I thought defined me. And when I gave all that shit up, then I learned who I was.
Yeah.
So I would say 8 or 9 for sure, just because I've never met anyone else like me. And that's the best part.
Right. Being yourself.
Yeah.
Original.
Dope. All
Well,
right.
thank you.
Thank you guys for having me.
Before we fully cap it off, fully,
Don't forget.
where can people find you?
Oh, yeah.
This is your plug time. Anything you got going on that you want to promote, let them know.
For sure. You guys can find us on Instagram and Facebook. Instagram at Dance Studio. Facebook, facebook.com/Dance Studio. We have our Latin Fridays event. It's every third Friday of the month. So 12 events per year from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. And you can come take a free lesson from 8:20 till 9. We usually do salsa and bachata. Otherwise, we just do one or the other. And then it's just DJing and hanging out and dancing till 1 a.m. And then we usually have performances at 10:30. So people come from Chicago, people come from Milwaukee, just to kind of showcase like what it looks like from a performance standpoint. But it's a good time. So you guys should definitely come check those out.
What's the next one?
April 18th, whatever that third Friday is.
Perfect.
16th or
I'll try to
18th.
be there.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you, Amber. Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you, B.
Thank you, guys.
Shout out to our episode 4 guest, Gabi, for helping us out.
Hey.
Behind the scenes.
Our intern, Chato, Eddie's brother, couldn't be here today. As you guys know, please like and subscribe. Watch our other episodes if you guys take the time. As we reiterated, now we're on plenty audio platforms, iTunes, Google Play, Anchor. You guys can find us. If not, YouTube is our main platform. We like to showcase
Our beautiful faces.
that come through the show. Thank you, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Peace.